Gargoyles. The original image was created in the 13th century. Later, they became a grotesque image of rock and stone, produced in the late 1500s. Were these stone golems revered? Are they sacred? And are they also real? We discuss the living grotesque next on the Ropen Network.
The RRN Ropen Radio Network is brought to you by 511 Tactical. Always be ready. By Tick Liquor Firearms. 2017 gold winner for Best of the Mid-Valley Outdoor Gear Store. By Creation Evidence Museum of Texas. God's Word in 6 days. And by the Wildlife Safari, America's top cheetah breeding program. You are closer to Africa than you think.
This is the field of the unknown, the strange and fantastic, the horrific and amazing. You are listening to Cryptozoological Talk on the RRN Ropen Radio Network, and Salem is listening. Wherever you're listening in, Spotify, iHeartRadio, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, we're glad you're here. I'm your host, Jacob Guerra. We have a very familiar face in the studio today. This is Danielle Baker, fitness champion and cryptozoological enthusiast. Welcome back. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay.
Yeah?
Okay, I should have said good, but...
Folks, do you know what a spout is? I would think everybody should know this one. It's quite obvious, right? Okay. Do you know what a gargoyle is?
Yes.
To a degree.
Yeah.
A monster
I did some research on it, yeah.
Okay.
I know what it is on buildings and things like that, but like with the mythical side of it, I've done some investigating on it, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But we got your attention, though, folks.
Yeah.
What if I was to tell you they are one and the same? Let's get into some history. Gargoyle comes from the French word gargile. In English, we know this to be gargle. Gargoyles were originally designed in the 13th century as a means of disposing water, because otherwise you'd have water damage. A French legend that sprang up around the name of Saint Romanus mentions a creature that he killed called Gargile or Goji. Now, when they killed it, they tried to burn it with fire, but the head would not burn, so they mounted it on the church building to scare off evil spirits. Okay, so this is a way of protecting the home, the structure, the building, the castle. You don't want water damage. Water damage can be very, very costly and destructive. So you have to create a system that funnels the water away. You're saying, well, what's that got to do with a monster? Well, that's where we find out. The history begins way back. In 1561, the Italian word grotesque came into play, harnessing the gargoyle. Okay, so what they did was they created these statuettes. First, they had the funnel system, drain the water out. They're like, okay, how can we make that better? How can we give it some form, some life? Well, that's where the word grotesque comes in. So they took that, they harnessed the gargoyle, and now you have a statue that represents different things, but it's still supposed to perform putting out the water outside of it. Okay. Now, the Chinese have a different way of looking at this, and they call it the pakwa. Okay, and they have different forms of the pakwa, but they put it outside their home to warn off evil spirits. And these don't necessarily resemble some sort of grotesque looking creature, but sometimes it's like a chimera in a way, maybe like a chiron, a statue of some sort. Sometimes they're mirrors, They look like a mirror in some way. They use that to warn off evil spirits, but here's the problem. Can you fight evil with evil? Hold your horses here. I'm not trying to step on any way. I'm not trying to say anything false of anyone or a culture. I'm not trying to tear down a culture here, but let's stop and think. Why on earth would you have statues like this on the house of Yahweh, the one true God? Do you think God wants his work to be inflicted with this kind of grotesque looking imagery? And some people would say, well, how do you know they're not of God? Maybe they are creatures that he... No, whoa, 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 whoa. Stop right there. God created man in his own image. Hands, arms, legs, a head. There's nothing in there that says wings, tail, and horns. Nothing. So this is just another way of the enemy manipulating God's creation. All right? So, like I said, putting them on churches, what were you thinking? So we're just trying to ward off evil spirits. No, you're not. If anything, you're probably bringing them.
Yeah, so I was looking into that as well. So basically, it dates back to even times of ancient Egypt and other pagan non-Christian places. Putting on churches were useful in other ways beyond just the aesthetics. It said that the church wanted to scare people into worship, but also incorporate some pagan elements.
Aha. It seems like most people would say, oh, look, they had good intentions
and
for...
Mostly on Catholic churches, sorry.
Yeah.
I think that's the Roman Catholic Church and stuff like that.
Well, they also tried to do... The Catholics did try to provide a way of forgiveness for sins and making you pay out of your pocket for this. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. They're in violation of God's word over and over again. And it's part of the Dark Ages during a time where people are easily more controlled by manipulation of fear, hysteria, the Me Too movement, I guess you could say. But again, I go back to saying, why would you do that? It's one thing that leads to something else, something that gets worse and worse. And then suddenly it's just part of the culture.
I feel like the devil's trying to find his way into the churches.
Oh, yeah, he creeps in.
That's part of it. Someone has an idea and then they get in there and they...
Well, it's interesting that they...
everything up.
Yeah, they do. And then it's interesting that they just kind of let it go. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, it was put there. It's been a long time. People have seen it. They enjoy it. Let's just leave it.
Oh, it's art. It's only art.
It's art. Yeah, I understand. It's art. Doesn't make it right.
It scares kids, too,
Yeah, and some of these statues go missing, which is
that
really odd.
They made an excuse for, it was this and this and this, why it went missing because someone took it off and they think they might have auctioned it. Are you talking about the thing I showed you? Yeah, but because of how much it weighs, that doesn't really make sense to me and how that would have happened.
Or is it possible that this thing flew off by itself?
That too, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I don't think someone took it off.
And I know that's a radical thought to say, hey, look, this stone golem is an actual living creature.
Yeah, but that's the folklore and legends of it, is that it's a stone that comes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It comes alive and it disappears and comes back and stuff like that.
Well, when I look at it, the variants here, Danielle, when it comes to gargoyles, they're humanoid, they're demon, but they're also simian. Most people forget about that.
What's that mean?
Well, we're talking about something that has connection to apes, to primates. Okay. And there are reports of these simians around the world, which we will be discussing. Before we do, though, our first guest today is from Missouri. Most people would consider this to be outlandish, but hold on. He's been featured in shows such as Monsters in America or American Monsters, vice versa. He had his own chilling encounter with this creature, something that should not be part of our world, folks. But there it was, close to him. In the dead of night, Buddy had a large flashlight with bright lumens that he shined on this thing so he could actually see it. It's unfortunate that he didn't have something to record with. My guest is also a parapsychologist, a researcher of the unknown, the ghostly. But there's a reason he went out to look for himself, to see for himself if there's any truth to this legend. Apparently there is. That this creature haunts a particular site in Missouri called Turkey Creek. And I want to warn you, do not go out to this place, especially by yourself. This isn't as if you're looking for an extinct reptile. No, this is something far worse. Do not go looking for this creature, because surely it will find you. You don't want to come face to face with something like that. That's could be very potentially very powerful.
That might make people actually want to do it.
Yeah, but again, I have to bring this up.
Yeah, you have to warn them. Say, hey, you didn't hear this from me. I didn't tell you to go out there.
Yeah. This is an eyewitness testimony that I'm sharing with all of you. But again, you have to be forewarned. Kind of like others have told me, be careful when you go out looking for pterosaurs, because these things will kill you if their food source is scarce. This thing will kill you too. Or it could possess you, one or the other. I don't know. But I'm telling you right now, do not go looking for this creature. This is not reverse psychology right now. I'm not trying to play this game. I'm warning you.
Yeah.
But we're about to hear the testimony of a really amazing gentleman who has come face to face with this creature. And it's a radical one. It's amazing. But it's absolutely necessary. Because we need to be able to show people and tell people, explain to them, again, that there's so much more going on in this world than just what their eyes see every day. This is Brian Lile on the Ropen Network.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Brian. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Excellent. Let's see if we can raise your volume just a little bit. Can you raise that a little bit for me?
I'm at the max.
You're at the max? Okay. Brian, tell me what year this encounter happened.
Oh, my goodness. I would say probably 5 years ago.
5 years?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. So, being this fantastic encounter, a scary one at that, I have to ask this question real fast. How do you sleep at night when you have something like that happen to you, or when you see something like that?
Well, I'm a different type of person based on my prior job, stuff like that, and not really much. So, yeah, I've been able to deal with it just fine.
Okay. Well, that's good, because sometimes I wonder, when you have something you come face to face with, it seems rather difficult to try to shake it off or try to sleep it off. I have to ask that question because not many people really think about it, about how it can affect you and traumatize you, or if it plays a psychological issue on the mind. So, this is where we begin. I understand that what you've seen is an abnormality, a creature that most people would consider in some way a gargoyle. Now, do you believe that to be the case? Do you think that's the best thing that fits this description?
Yeah, as far as descripting, yeah, I would say that would be the closest thing to it.
Okay. Take me through your encounter. I'm going to do my very best not to interrupt you, okay? We're here to listen to your statement, and then we'll take it from there, okay? Tell me all the details from the very beginning.
Well, I kind of have to go back a little bit. I have a friend of mine. Him and his brother and another guy knew about this church. Indian burial grounds were supposed to be around, and supposedly there was a demonic creature that protected this area. So they decided they were going to go and they made it to the kind of Turkey Creek is in the middle of nowhere. The woods grow over the road. It is really dark and isolated. If you come up to a creek that crosses the road, there's no bridge. You have to drive through the water. And when you drive through the water there's a field to your right. And they went into this field to try to find this Indian burial ground. As soon as they started driving through the field, the vehicle started to right. And so the driver slammed on the brakes. And I know it's going to be hard to believe for a lot of people, but the police report even kind of backs it up. The vehicle actually raised and it was tossed to the right 45 feet. The vehicle rolled several times. My buddy's brother was broke. My buddy was scared to get out of the car to go get help, but he knew if he didn't do it, his brother would make it. So he took off running, and he ran for a mile until he found a home. Anyways, his brother did survive. He had a broken neck. Well, this kind of played in the back of his mind for years. I knew about the story, and I kept asking my people out there, I need to see this. And he was so worried about my safety, he said, no. Finally, one day, he broke in and decided we would go out there. And so we went up there late at night, across the creek was up a little bit higher than possible, probably about the bottom of my door in my truck. And we went ahead and drove across the creek, got all situated, and like I said, the forest is right up to the road. The road is sand. And we get in the back of my truck trying to come up with a game plan of where we're going to go and what to do. And then something hit the front of my truck that made it shake pretty good.
I think I'm going to have you, do you have by chance a plug-in microphone by chance?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I wish I did.
Okay, let's see here. So you said you're using your phone to record yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try having you may have to bring it up and hold it.
We can try that. How's that?
A little bit closer. A little bit closer.
How about that?
Okay, yeah, because what's happening is the audio is jumping because it's so far away from you. And that's kind of the thing with houses when you have like smartphones and camera phones. Right. They do that, unfortunately, unless you have a plug-in mic. We can work with it. Don't worry. We'll make it good.
All right.
But this is probably the best position right here. I know it's probably holding it, but we'll probably hear you a little bit better. Let's go through the motions here. Let's go through these questions. You said the first thing that strikes me is that this is a burial ground on Turkey Creek. Now that one jumps out to me.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah. Do you have a question? You want to ask a question first, Danielle?
I'm just pulling some stuff up on my phone and looking at it real quick, but
okay. Want me to take it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Tell me about the geographical location of this area, Brian, a little bit more. Tell me, what do you know about the surrounding areas? Is this rooted in mysticism, anything like that?
Well, the Ozark, it's always been filled with lore of especially a lot of Indians, Native Americans took up residence, lived along the creeks. And it's right there where the Trail of Tears was. So there's a lot of history behind this. And a lot of the Civil War occurred through there. So there's all kinds of things that's happened in that area that bring up a lot of lore, bring up a lot of folktale, and even some strange sightings.
Okay. So anytime you have, I want to reiterate this, folks, when you have a cemetery or burial grounds, you're bound to have spirits. Spirits like to stroll around these parts, they hang around these parts. It's brought on. There's that spiritual feeling that brings them out. It's really, really odd because when I was involved in parapsychology, we found that most of the time these demonic spirits like to hang around the cemeteries almost as if they're taunting those who have died and did not go to heaven, in a sense. I can't say that is a fact, but there's definitely a high demonic presence when it comes to burial grounds and graveyards. I'm not saying that everyone in those graveyards is lost, but what I am saying is that these evil spirits love to be around these parts. Okay? So that's the first thing that jumps out to me. So do you think there's any kind of soldiers, or was there any? So was there maybe Native Americans who were buried in these parts? Brian?
Oh yeah, that area is well known for a lot of Indian burial grounds. As a matter of fact, Missouri, depending what part of Missouri you're in the plains in one spot, and then as you move further south, then you run into the foothills of the Ozark Mountains.
Okay.
And the Ozark, and the topography changes dramatically. Now, when you're in the plains coming into the foothills, you'll see these gigantic mounds that are out of place. And these mounds are man-made. And they're pretty high. I mean, they're like 1,500 feet high.
Oh, I see.
These mounds are. And these mounds are known to be Indian ritual sites and Indian burial grounds.
Okay. So do you think they might be worshiping some kind of winged being? Because a lot of Native Americans in history have worshipped beings of the sky.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what I think
done that.
Growing up.
Yeah.
I don't know, just my idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've done that forever. Matter of fact, they believe that these winged creatures help protect their grounds and their beliefs.
Okay. But I find it interesting that this winged creature doesn't resemble a pterosaur. It doesn't resemble an eagle, a thunderbird, or a pterodactyl. It's something else far worse. Something else that is almost protecting this area, this geographical location. And I wonder how much territory it does control, and if it's been seen before. What do you know about that, Brian? Has anyone else reported this creature?
No, like I said, the incident that happened before we came back, they heard the whooshing noise when the truck was the vehicle was being lifted up and flipped. That's the only report that I know of in that area.
Okay. Before we move on here, Brian, since I got your voice much more clearer, let's go back. Tell me again from the moment you saw this creature. Okay. Take me back to that moment again.
All right, I can take you up to the point where me and my son are following the noise in the woods, and it's breaking the branches. At first they were small, but the branches become much thicker, and it was almost like the breaking was done intentionally as violently as like a show of force. We heard it cross the creek, the splashing, and we were trying to run up to catch up with it. By the time we got to the edge of the creek on the road, we could see the waves and the ripples left from when this thing crossed the road. I had my flashlight with me, a 2,000 luminance flashlight, and I shined at the left side of the woods, and I'm following the noise of something running, and I run into this small clearing, and there it was right in the midst of my flashlight, a demonic creature with wings, a tail. It was humanoid. It was almost like a grayish color, no fur, no nothing, hoofed feet. I followed it in this flashlight, and then it hit the woods. I continued to follow it some more, and I hit yet another clearing. It turned and looked right at me like it was expecting to be seen, and it wanted to be seen.
Yeah.
And it didn't do it, but I had the impression that it wanted to smile at me. But it didn't do it. It's just an impression I got. It got back in the woods, and yet one more time it hit a clearing, and it looked again at me, and then it hit the woods again. It got quiet for a second, and me and my son were kneeling at the edge of the creek, listening, and we heard it running towards us. We heard the limbs breaking, the brush moving, and I kind of got up a little bit and grabbed at my son's shoulder, get ready to pull him, because it sounded like it was coming at us at full force. And right before it got to the creek, we heard this whooshing sound like large flapping wings. And it flew right above us, right over us, and it did a couple circles above us as Don and another guy came down to meet with us. They saw it, the shadow of it flying above us, and then it took off, and that's the last we seen of it.
My gosh. Okay. Danielle, before I ask this question, do you have one before I chime in.
I'm trying to think of questions, but I'm just so
amazed.
Yeah, like part of me is like wants to ask details.
Floored.
Like what color were the eyes? Like
yeah.
How did you feel? Were you scared? Were you like in shock, or were you just like, what the hell is this? I want to figure it out. Like that's kind of what my question is. Like, what kind of feeling did you get from it? Like, how did you? Because you said you followed it, so obviously maybe you had some adrenaline going, or you're just trying to figure it out. Like, you know what I mean? Because I don't know, some people might run, but I guess like there's a fight or flight response. So maybe you guys were just following it just to figure out what it was. Well, you weren't scared?
Don and I are it's hard to explain. We're the type that run into things instead of run away.
Yeah.
And when I saw this, my first thing was finally I get to see something with my own eye, something that's been talked about, and I'm looking at it. Mm-hmm. But at the same token, I didn't like the way it was looking at me. It was almost like it could do whatever it wants, and there was nothing I could do about it. That's the kind of feeling you get, like I'm at his whim at the moment. But at the same time, I didn't worry about it because I knew I had God with me, so I wasn't too worried about it. I was wanting more to capture it on video, but unfortunately, it's too far away for any night vision to pick up at that time. So now we have different night vision. If it was to happen again, we would have got them on film, no problem.
Okay. I was going to say, what kind of equipment did you have, Brian?
Well, at that night, it was more of it wasn't a full-fledged investigation. We were going out to kind of case the place out to see where we could set up and what resources are available. So Don just had a normal Sony night handy cam that had night vision on it, but we didn't bring extra IR lights or nothing. It was just enough to do your own video recording of yourself, describing things we need to bring, what we see, what the layout is. And that's all we had.
Okay.
And so we didn't bring none of the thermal imaging, none of the long range night vision. We didn't have none of that with us at the time.
Okay. All right. How many was in your group again, Brian?
Well, actually, it was me and Don, and my wife is the third member, and my son came with because he's heard the stories of this thing and wanted to check it out. So there was 4 of us out there at the time.
I see.
Well, 5 of us. That one guy that drove the car when it was flipped in the very first part of the story, he was there.
That's right, because you were featured on Monsters in America. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Okay. The audience will see that too. So here's where I ask a big question. And I've always wanted to ask this. Whenever I hear people say they've seen a flying humanoid, potentially gargoyle-like, the first thing that comes to mind is this. Will they know the difference between a monster and something that's extinct? Brian, is it possible what you saw was a living pterosaur instead?
Oh, no way. No. I had such a good look at its face. And to me, it was demonic 100% in my mind.
Okay.
And the way it looked at me, it was like toying with me. No, I don't think it was a creature like that. I think it was an intelligent being that knew reasoning and knew doubt and everything else. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was demonic.
Okay. So you had heard something about this creature. It was a creature you went looking for, or you heard reports of supernatural activity in the area that made you want to go out there?
Actually, both. There's been reports of supernatural occurrences out there, but what made me want to go out was the incident that happened to my friend when their vehicle was tossed the way it is. Even the accident reports, when the life flight and all the state troopers and everybody showed out, they were amazed how they had the skid marks where the vehicle stopped, but then the vehicle's 50 feet to the right rolling, and they don't have an explanation of how it got 50 feet to the right when it clearly had stopped. So they were pretty stumped, and it's even in the police report. They don't know how the vehicle got there.
Okay. Interesting. Let me gather my thoughts here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Would you like to ask a question while I do that?
No, it's just that, my previous job, I was a federal police officer. I retired as that. So I use all my investigative skills and that in what I do now. And to hear Don's story of what happened to them, I needed to know. I needed to know what it was that attacked them that night.
Okay, so that's when you...
And again, it toyed with us. I don't know if we would have stayed any longer, what it would have done. If it would have come back, I have no idea. I have no idea what its intentions were.
So I have a question. So how long after your friend had the car incident did you guys decide, hey, I'm going to go out there? Was it the next day? Was it like relatively close in the same time period? Because I'm wondering if it was just something lingering out there for just a short amount of time. Because I'm sure that some people, after hearing your story, have tried to find this being, but weren't able to. Just my thoughts.
Since the accident and when we went out was about 8 years.
Oh, okay.
He would not go out there at all. It was very fearful to him due to the fact that it was brother whose neck was broke, and he was worried about us. Not so much about himself, but he didn't want us to get injured.
But one of the reasons
thing is, when that took off, it brought back memories to Don. I mean, Don was scared for us.
Okay.
He knew what was out there.
One of the reasons you wanted to see for yourself as well, but also your background is paranormal. You're an investigator into the supernatural as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But we do it because we want to help people seek God and seek Christ and find their relief there, because what these things are is nothing but evil.
And you saw for yourself. And you're out there, you're like, okay, I don't expect to see anything, but you did. And do you think that was...
We weren't expecting to find nothing.
Okay. And you believe that was the Lord showing you this for a reason, so you can share this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no doubt. There's things that happen in our life that we can only guess. What was that? And 9 times out of 10, there's an explanation to what that was when somebody hears a noise or experiences a strange smell. There's always an explanation, 90%.
Okay.
It's the 10% that we're looking at.
Your echo's back on again. Yeah. 1 minute, Brian.
Is it fixed?
Yeah,
that's better.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a look at this description of this creature. Let's go into this. Okay, a little more detail. Tell me the color again.
It was a grayish color. That's kind of like a grayish dull white.
Okay. The eyes. What color eyes were they?
Well, black. Pretty much just black. Empty.
Makes more sense, because you think that most people probably say, oh, I expected something more crazy, such as red or green.
What I've heard from...
No, this is black eyes. It was like they were empty, it felt like. This is just what I felt when I saw it.
Okay. So it was trying to induce fear, but it relished the idea that it was seen. It wanted you to see it. And I've had so many reports of these creatures doing this. They love it when we see them. And they're thinking, okay, look, we've got control over this person. Not so fast. You may not. Especially if this person's saved. Okay.
Yeah, it was weird. Even the ears were rugged, and like not smooth like ours. They were rugged.
Okay.
I guess the best way to explain it is something took a bite every half inch, a small bite. There were little indentions like that. The nose was small, very small.
Human-like?
No, not really. It's almost pointy to a way, like a ski slope would come up and then point down.
Okay.
Definitely had a mouthful of teeth, no doubt about that, because it opened its mouth when it looked at me.
The mouth, was that human-like, or was it more animal-like?
It was more animal.
Okay.
And it had more than one row of teeth. It looked like maybe 2 or 3.
Is it sharp teeth or just like regular?
In the front, the top and the bottom were all sharp. that I could see. I don't know what the sides were because I could just see the color. I couldn't see if they were pointy or not.
Okay.
Part of me thinking like something weird, like vampire-like.
Yeah. And again, this thing just, it was almost like I knew what it was in my heart, but I don't have proof to say exactly what it was. I just know what I felt.
Okay.
And what came across in my heart, what I thought it was, and my son agrees too. This thing, in my opinion, was 100% demonic.
That's what I think.
Whether it's a demon or a manifestation of something a demon made, I don't know.
How big was it, Brian?
I can't tell. It was about 8 feet, 8 feet tall.
That's huge.
It was pretty tall. And the wings went above its head, the top part, and the bottom part drug the ground when it ran, but they were pretty rugged looking.
Okay. That's big. Very big.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
But again, it matches reports of other phenomena that we've looked into as well, where these creatures are big. Did it have like a muscular form, or was it lean and slim?
No, it had muscles. It definitely did. The legs looked like human legs until you get to the feet, and they were hooved, because you could hear the hooves hit the ground as it run. Wow. And it was fast. It was fast.
It reminds me of what they're dealing with in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. And I always like to bring this one up because there's close connections of chimera effect, where you have a mixture of some things.
Like the Jersey Devil you're referring to?
Because the Jersey Devil could very well be multiple things. Or it could be gargoyle-like, could be a humanoid. We don't know for sure, but it sure has different descriptions by different eyewitnesses all over. How far away was the creature from you again?
No, I would have to say the creek's about 25 feet, so I'm thinking between 30 and 35 feet.
Okay. And so now I need to determine the time of day. What time was it?
Oh, it was night. It was probably about 11:30 at night.
Okay. So there's not going to be any sunlight, not going to be anything like that. No, nothing to illuminate. Because it's going to be pitch black out there, right?
We had a thumb-sized nail moon that was pretty much right above us almost. Okay. So that helped just a little bit. We were able to see shadows above us.
And that's
if
where
I remember correctly, I think it was a thumbnail.
Okay. So that's what some people will probably ask the question. If it's so dark outside, how did you see it again? Explain.
I had a 2,000 luminous flashlight that'll light up the whole wood line.
Okay, yeah,
I can
they get
adjust
bright.
it into a spotlight or to a broadband, and I had them on both at time. So
you were illuminating this creature with your flashlight.
Yeah, I definitely got it with my flashlight, no doubt.
And I would say, so you're saying that this creature is probably what attacked Don. You believe this is what attacked him originally, but did he see it as well at that time, those years ago?
He didn't see it when it happened to them. They just heard it.
Okay.
They heard the flapping. They knew the lore about it, the protector of that island or that burial ground.
Okay.
And to me, this was an answer what Don had been looking for. This is the answer to what happened to their vehicle.
Okay. And you've been, how many times have you been talked to from journalists around the country? Has many people reached out to you? How many would you say over the years?
On this incident or on our investigation?
This particular incident, yeah.
Just a couple. I've had one amateur writer, but basically just America Monsters and then you guys.
Okay. Interesting. But a very credible story from a credible eyewitness. Danielle, do you have any further questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay. I know we're taking in the information.
Yeah.
As amazing as it is, and like I said, these encounters are rare. They are written about. People write about them in stories and in books. But to actually hear someone's personal testimony, most people, when it comes to this flying creatures, they don't want to talk to anyone. It's so terrifying. And that's one of the people we will get to later.
I'm wondering if you went to the exact same location as the crash site, or was it a different area within that vicinity? Like to find it. Do you remember?
Actually, we were right in the road in front of the field. The field was to our back side, to the right a little bit, but then the woods start on both sides. So we were in the heavily wooded side on both sides. So I'd say the field was about maybe 50 yards away.
Okay, so you guys went back to basically around the same area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
It's important, yeah. And what do you know was there?
You'd have to really see the area because words cannot describe it. It's creepy already because it's surrounded by forest and you're on this really small gravel, sandy dirt road, and all of a sudden there's a creek in front of you have to drive through. I mean, it's just really spooky and dark. If you were to break down it, like I said, it took Don a mile to find a house when that accident occurred. It was pretty secluded.
Now, I did a little bit of research on the area. Apparently, there is some type of water-like vortex within, like, a river or creek or something like that. And so I thought that was interesting that it was nearby. I found that last night online. I forgot what they call it, but it's some kind of way how the water flows in and out. It's different.
Right.
You think that might be connected in some way?
Anything is possible.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at, and I'm going to bring up a Bible verse. If you look at the Bible verse, when an individual has a demon expelled from him, unless he picks up Christ, the demon comes back and finds the room swept and clean and empty, but he brings 7 more with him. But
yeah,
you remember when Jesus cast them out, he said that the demons could find no rest in arid places. So why did he specify that they can't find rest in dry places? That makes you think only water. And if you ever notice, most of the occurrences on the demonic, there's water somewhere close by.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, the Native Americans, they did these rituals and stuff like that, or anybody else doing some kind of pagan rituals, like, oh, this area is haunted, I'm going to go do this, you know, whatever happens, you know what I mean? But a lot of times they use elements of the earth, especially like water and stuff like that. And water is very significant spiritually, like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it could be like the opposite. They use it too for like evil, you know what I mean? Like
unintentionally, probably more like. Yeah.
And look at Isaiah. It says in abandoned places, you know, the only thing that takes a resonance at abandoned places is a satire in the Bible, according to Isaiah. And if you look up the definition of the satire, it's half man, half goat. Mm-hmm. What that represents.
Sounds familiar with something else we're going to be talking about later on in the future.
Yeah.
You know, when you and I were talking a while back, our first chat, you brought up a very interesting thing that really pulled me in, kind of what we were just talking about now. I asked why we are seeing these kinds of humanoid-looking creatures. Why would these beings, I know that they're fallen, okay, but why do they want to look like this? Wouldn't they appear to us as something of like, if Satan is the angel of light, you know, I believe he probably appeared to Joseph Smith. A lot of people aren't going to like this, but I'm not a Mormon. Okay, you have to have discernment to know right from wrong and sense those evil presence. All right. So I wonder, and I ask this question: why would they want to look like this, unless they have no choice but to look like this when they appear to us? Do we see them like this? Is that how they really look? What are your thoughts, Brian?
I think we manifest them. I mean, if you really think about it, the Bible says on earth as it is in heaven, right? And what you bound on earth, you bound in heaven. And basically, when we come up with descriptions of creatures, and take the Slender Man, it's an online creature that was developed online. We know for a fact it had no history, no folklore.
Yeah.
But yet sightings became more and more. These demons take our fears and manifest them. And that's what we see. And it's to draw our attention away from God and more onto what they look like and where they are, and are they coming for us? Yeah. That's what everybody asks when they have an experience. They're going to kill me. They all are afraid of it, and that's what they want.
Yeah. See, that puts a lot in perspective, and I feel this too. I feel the same way, Brian, as you do. They just, these are questions you have to ask. They're very, very important for the public to understand what we're dealing with. So, with us talking about this, trying to expose the darkness as Ephesians would tell us, are we doing the wrong thing by talking about it? What's your opinion?
Well, there's a line. I mean, I'll just use an example. And let's say people talk about the end times, and they're more worried about who the Antichrist is rather than getting to heaven, be with Jesus, right? So when we concentrate on the evil too much, we're taking away where our attention should be. But at the same token, you want to know who your enemy is and what they're capable of.
Agree.
And that's where we draw the line. We find out who the enemy is, what their weakness is, and what they are capable of. And then we seek our attention to God and Christ and everything else. But that's as far as we should go. If we carry it any further, then we've crossed over to an occult. So you got to stay on that fine line.
I agree. And that goes with parapsychology as well, and not just cryptozoology, but that we're venturing in two fields. One is very fantastic when you talk about potential for dinosaurs and anything else that's supposed to be a part of our world. But when you look at something like this, though, Brian, that's not supposed to be part of our world, but here it is, then it becomes a darker field. And you're right. We have to be very careful. We have to know our boundaries and when to pull away. So thank you so much for explaining that to the audience. Very, very important. So I'm getting ready to let Brian go. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Danielle?
No.
Okay.
I had something, but now I forgot. So I'll just
I think you did good with understanding the geographical area and what could potentially. And I want to reiterate something here, folks, and for Brian. Danielle is Native American. Okay, the blood is in her, so she understands all the aspects of it. It's part of her. Okay, so if anyone's going to be able to understand and give more clarification to it, it would be Danielle. So keep that in mind. Brian, thank you so much for your time. I'm glad I could have you on the network. It is a pleasure. I mean, real pleasure. This is something that not many people will tackle, but we did. The idea of a gargoyle-like creature alive is a terrifying thought, but at the same time, I want people to understand they have to be careful, especially if they're going to go into cemeteries or forbidden areas. You can't be alone when you do these things, and be aware of your surroundings and put on the armor of God, because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. So thank you for being here on the network.
You're welcome. And one last thing, this is going to be more common, and more occurrences are going to happen because of where we're at in time. This is going to get much worse. And a lot of people are going to experience things and hear things and see things that they don't want to. So you're right. Pick up the armor of God and move forward.
I agree. Thank you so much, Brian. We'll keep in touch. Anytime you'd like to reach out, that's what I'm here for. And I hope to hear more about your endeavors in the future. But thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay. You too, sir. Bye-bye.
All right.
You might find yourself in a situation where you might have to turn everyday items into an improvised weapon. A steel barrel pen is a great defensive tool. Steel barrel simply means that it is one piece of metal from tip to end. That way it has enough sturdiness and construction in order to be used as a puncture tool if you find yourself in a bad situation. You can use these in a myriad of ways: an overhand grip, an underhand grip. There are several grips you can use in order to defend yourself with it, but the goal is to inflict pain with a pen in order to escape whatever that crisis is. And not only is it a great defensive weapon, but it also writes. You can communicate with it. But on top of that, it is also great to get yourself out of a sticky situation if you find yourself trapped in a building or trapped in a vehicle. You can use it to break the glass. Remember, just aim for the corners of the windows. It's much easier to break glass that way than going dead center. So, whoever said the pen is mightier than the sword, they were half right.
I wonder why this tomato's red.
I wonder what makes dirt so dirty.
I wonder if the Garden of Eden was real. Want to find out? I wonder if plants grow in the dark.
Welcome back. You are listening to Cryptozoological Talk on the RRN Ropen Radio Network. I'm your host, Jacob Guerra. Joining me, Danielle Baker, fitness champion and researcher as well. We are talking about gargoyles, the living grotesque. Are they real? Just had a great conversation with Brian Lile. Told us about his strange encounter in Missouri. I believe him. Brian has spent many years in the force. He has no reason to make something like this up. So, we just heard the testimony of Brian Lile on the Ropen Network. Appreciate him coming forward. Not many would. Especially the next gentleman we will talk about who had his own encounter near my neck of the woods. Danielle, wow, what do you think?
In my opinion, like I agree with him that it was demonic. That's just my take on it, because why would it be otherwise? You know what I mean? If it feels evil, if you have that feeling in your heart when you're dealing with something like that, you're probably right.
Yeah. Some people can't discern the evil that's in front of them. But as I want to make sure people understand this very clearly. When God comes, he comes with beauty, grace. He comes with love, complete understanding. There's no confusion, there's no chaos. It's crystal clear. And that's not what you get from when you see something. Run. Get away. Because this thing is clearly the enemy. And I will say, I could have asked the question, is this really a gargoyle? But it sure represents what we see depicted on buildings, churches, everywhere. It comes very close to it. Yeah. And he's right. It's almost like they're just listening and they start to shapeshift. Oh, that's another question I could have asked. But maybe he doesn't know about that. Could be a skinwalker. A manifestation of some sort. I don't know. I don't know if I could say it was a skinwalker. They usually are much different from that. Skinwalkers aren't usually portrayed as something that flies or with a tail. Anyway, fantastic encounter for the records.
According to my research, it also says they have psychic abilities. Now, I think something spiritual, such as that, like something like that, could be, of a spiritual nature.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just an animal. That's
No.
just my opinion. I think there's something more to it than just, hey, this is a half-breed of this, half-breed of that, which science can do nowadays. It's been proven that they've been able to make half human, half the, they've experimented. Oh, well, we tossed it out and we didn't get it past embryonic stage. But for me, I don't really buy that.
Is that going back to the Stalin days?
Yeah,
the experimentation.
Science has proven that they can mix different animal species together. But having the psychic abilities and all that, to me, that sounds like something
far more
otherworldly.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I guess I would ask this as well, and I hinted at it, but why is it choosing to haunt this particular area? There's got to be something associated with it. And something else we're going to get into a little bit later is more of the geographical locations. Mm-hmm. And the word vortex comes to mind. Something is luring this creature. As I discussed, graveyards are a popular haunt for the unknown. But there seems to be a reason why it's protecting this particular area. That's what we need to find out. But let's move on, as our time will be limited today. Has there been any other encounters of these grotesque creatures known as gargoyles? Is anybody familiar with the Batsquatch of Washington State? This is not an old cryptid whatsoever. This is fairly new. A couple of decades old, but still. Danielle, have you heard of this one? Yeah.
I've heard of it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same here. As a matter of fact, it's been popularized recently by some of the pale ales. You can find it on beer cans these days. But it does go back to the early 1980s. And in some ways, it shares a great deal of commonality with the legendary Mothman of Virginia, which people are seeing more of in the state of Illinois. We'll get into that. Its name derives from the word bat, another of the Washington State's world-famous cryptids, the Sasquatch, linked Batsquatch. Although I kind of doubt that one just a little bit, but I'll explain why. Stories of the creature abound, particularly in the aftermath of that hectic world-shaking volcanic event. Its status has shifted over the years from supernatural even to folkloric manifestation of Washington's collective consciousness. Like the Loveland Frogman or the Jersey Devil, Batsquatch has been adopted by the natives and has become an icon of its land. What year were you born?
85.
85. I was born in 79. I'm in my 40s. But I do remember from a young age the terror that everybody was filled with on May 18th, 1980.
Oh, Mount St. Helens eruption.
Yes. The one mountain I love, I call it my mountain. As a matter of fact, when I'm cremated, or when I die someday, my wish is to be cremated and my ashes scattered at Mount St. Helens.
I'll take note of that.
Yeah. Take note. On March 27, 1980, a series of volcanic explosions and cataclysmic flaws began shaking and rattling in the area of Mount St. Helens in Skamania County, Washington, United States. From below, everyone stared in disbelief and amazement as the telltale signs of something fishy going on were visible from the summit of the volcano. A series of blasts smacked the region into a panic on May 18, 1980. By the time everyone got their heads on straight, Mordor had erupted. A huge explosive cataclysm, the type Michael Bay can't get enough of, blanketed the sky and blotted out the sun. Nature showing the other retrobates in the prison yard why Mama deserves respect. The eruption had a volcanic The eruption had a volcanic eruption index of 5. It was the most significant to occur in the state since the much smaller 1915 eruption of Lassen Peak in California. It is the most disastrous volcanic eruption in the U.S. history, and the aftermath wasn't a picnic either. I remember, there was lots of ash in our neighborhood at the time. Approximately 57 people were killed during the blast, more than 200 houses, 47 bridges, 15 miles of railways, and 185 miles of highway were erased from the face of the earth in the blink of an eye. Toxicity and leftover ash from the blast might have been responsible for countless other deaths throughout the years. Yeah, it destroyed my brother's lungs. When U.S. President Jimmy Carter surveyed the damage and decided that the zone looked as desolate as moonscape photos from NASA's missions, and if tall tales are to be believed, another of the consequences of Mount St. Helens eruption is the Batsquatch. Huh. So we have a cryptid here that's not as old, supposedly not older than 1980, but is supposedly an aftermath of this amazing eruption, which, by the way, is still active.
Yeah.
Yep. Apparently, Mount Shasta and Mount Rainier, or is it Mount Adams, could actually go to their potential volcanoes.
And I'm wondering if all three of those have cryptid sightings. Like, is there an attraction with those areas because of the energy, that it produces, being a volcano, there has to be some kind of like energy force within the earth that might stir things up a little bit.
Well, from destruction comes beauty.
Yeah.
It was amazing. After about 4 years, life returned to the mountainside. It's amazing what it can do. I've seen that for myself. But you're right. I have heard lots of encounters of Mount Adams and Mount Shasta having winged creatures. Now, this could be pterodactyls, okay? Very easily, because pterosaurs are known throughout Washington State. Mm-hmm. Along the Yakima River, the central part of the Washington's Yakima Forest, they're out there. But something else is too, and that would be the Batsquatch. The description, why don't you take it from there, Danielle?
All right, right here.
Hopefully you have it on there.
Yeah, I do. The Batsquatch is said to be a large humanoid monstrous, clocking at more than 9 feet tall and weigh of 2 grown grizzly bears. The creature is said to have piercing yellow eyes, blue-tinged dark fur, razor-sharp teeth, a wolf-like muzzle, bird-like wings, a broad muscle-bound torso, and bat-like wings that span up to 50 feet. The species is also said to have psychic abilities. Telekinesis powers allow it to affect man-made objects like car engine, radios, and television sets.
Really? You were just talking about that.
I know. I did some research on it, too. So,
telekinetic, huh?
Yeah.
Well, something that gets me is they said 50 feet. Well, okay. If this creature is as large as they say it is, they said it's anywhere from 9 to 10 feet tall. Again, that's huge.
I'm not seeing it up close either, though.
Yeah, and that was my original thought process. Like, how far away was our first encounter? Now, the first sightings of the monster occurred post St. Helens eruption. Yes. They appeared everywhere. Curious folks, rescuers, investigators, or anyone trampling around the blast zone was aware from word of mouth warnings that something roamed the area. After? Okay. At night, during those few years after the eruption, only the brave and foolish would dare go out into the darkness and try their luck. For years, the Batsquatch was a Washington State legend, a creepy crawler folks would frighten their children with. A legend of tall tale, folklore, and nothing more. The St. Helens eruption was slipping into the memory banks. The nation was recuperating. The region was getting back on its feet. Why dwell on the bad and part of the bad? The first sighting was in 1994.
And see, this is all after the eruption.
Yeah, I'm going to speculate on that real fast, okay?
Yeah.
Fracking, volcanic eruption, earthquake, letting loose maybe something that was dormant and hidden and came to the surface. Or maybe it's what Brian had talked about. That maybe this is something that just manifests off to fears.
Like a major catastrophe.
Well, usually when something bad happens, derailments, destruction of bridges, the Silver Bridge collapse with the Mothman, these entities or these creatures are nearby. They know this is going to happen. But it's not like they're warning anyone. They don't warn anyone. So I can't really consider them to be a harbinger because they're failing at their job to be that warning. And why would they? They feed off of the carnage.
The negative energy, like people dying. And,
yeah, I think they feed off of the negative energy.
I feel like sometimes too, like when things happen like that with the Earth, it's like an energy disruption of some kind within the atmosphere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it could open things up. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
I would agree.
Yeah, like kind of like opening maybe portals, maybe vortexes, stuff like that. It kind of just shakes things up because everything's energy.
Yeah.
Everything's made up of energy. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I guess someone would say, okay, how would this be considered a gargoyle? Because it actually has the form, as we're about to get into. There's some characteristics of what I know this isn't the right name for this creature, okay? But this is what we known to call them through pop culture, gargoyle. So nowadays, instead of going back 100 years or so, where people associated them as a funnel system, we associate them in modern society as a creature, okay? Why don't you read the first sighting of 1994?
In April 1994, Brian Canfield was driving in Washington's Pierce County when his vehicle suddenly stalled. Canfield smacked the thing a bit, got out, and popped the hood. He looked inside when suddenly, blam, something landed on the top of his car. The vehicle's suspension squeamed and buckled. Canfield, the hood blocking his view, swallowed, took a deep breath, and did like a lemur. He took a quick peek above the metal rim. Scratching his chassis, snarling and looking it like it wanted to fight, the Batsquatch stood. Canfield ran, the creature leaped. Feet don't fail me now. Am I doing it right?
Yeah, you know.
Okay. When Canfield got back to the town, the back of his shirt was torn. His truck was all scratched, and his nerves were wrecked. People chalked it up to the man having one of them nights.
I see.
Is that it? Or is it
it's interesting, Danielle, because there's actually two different takes on this. Mm-hmm. One suggests that he got out of his vehicle. The other one suggests he didn't. Mm-hmm. But we wouldn't know for sure unless we actually talked to Brian. I want to chat on this real fast. His mother, Sandra Canfield, who was not in the area. She has a couple different addresses that I found. She's the only one who will talk to somebody. And I had a chance to chat with her as well. Brian will not talk to anyone anymore. He's done. And for good reason, too. He has been poked fun of many times. And when he was a teenager, he was 18 when he saw this thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he went to school, told his classmates, what's the first thing that's going to happen? They're going to pick on him. They did. Only a few of his close friends believed him, and they drew up the sketch of what this thing looks like. Huge, muscular, with wings, big, staring him down. The real question I had was how far away was he from it, though? Okay. And I don't think it says here at all the distance. And I looked at the different story. I'm combining the two, but it's a journalistic take. Journalists like to twist things here and there to make the stories more amusing sometimes. And it goes through word of mouth and it changes, which is unfortunate. But there is that other side where he actually got out of his vehicle, went a little bit closer, and that's where he was seeing this thing, and he froze in fear. But he did ask his dad to go back to the location with him. So he was terrified, told his parents. His dad went out.
Was he a kid?
He was 18.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
Young.
But it was enough for him to say, hey, look, you got to help me. I saw a monster. So his father drove out to the same exact location with him. His father chose to believe him. His mother believed him as well. Because their son was not somebody, and I quote, who played Dungeons and Dragons. He wasn't into horror movies.
Yeah.
He believes what he saw was real. And he stands to that to this very day. And I agree with him. And I believe him. Very credible eyewitness that saw something very real and horrifying. However, the creature is kind of got different descriptions here. It has bird-like feet and a body like a Sasquatch, but a head more like a wolf or a bat. Okay. And at first I thought maybe this was a dog man that shapeshifted into a flying creature because the wings weren't showing first, then they opened up. and the wings open.
So do you think some of these things crossbreed?
Yes.
To others? That's what I was thinking. Like, if it's already a crossbreed to begin with, why can't it do it another time?
Yeah.
Keep just evolving new things.
Well, that's what I was wondering too. Why is it that these, not trying to get off subject here I will for a moment, because I think it's important. Aliens, the grays, the whites, whatever you want to call them, are experimenting with the creatures on this earth.
Yeah.
Okay. And sometimes they're very successful. They create human beings with genetic tampering.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I think they're experimenting on animals.
That's what I think too.
So are they getting a hold of pterosaurs as well? One eyewitness said that he saw a pterosaur get captured by a UFO.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what do you think aliens, I think they're demonic, of course, but some want to be, they're good. They're, they're going to come back and help us and all this and that. But I kind of think it's like, these are demons. These are fallen angels.
I've listened to the testimonies and I've heard so much on this, and I don't usually go into ufology. I'll leave that for others. But I will say, if you think these things are on your side, you're sadly mistaken.
Yeah.
Because the agenda behind them is demonic. They come from the enemy. The whole idea here is to lead you astray. You'll say, but they're not doing that. Yes, they are. But people who are usually taken abducted are not Christian. Mm-hmm. They may become Christian later on, but they're not Christian.
Yeah.
So you're easily seized because of your non-believing attitude, of your non-believing in nature. Nick Redfern did a article on this in his book, True Conspiracies of NASA, which dealt with monsters of NASA and alien abductions, which we will get into a story here too about that. But it was fascinating because he mentioned that there was an individual who believed strongly that non-Christians are being abducted, experimented on, and sometimes killed and harvested. I agree with it.
So I have an interesting thing that's happened within my family. My uncle has claimed to have an abduction type of experience with my cousin, seeing aliens.
Yeah.
And they're really not that Christian. Maybe they grew up a certain way, but they don't really...
They know, but they don't follow.
They fall, it's kind of like that. And then my grandma and grandpa had an experience. So I don't know if it follows family lines. I've never had an experience that I know of, because I didn't become Christian until, I went to church when I was younger. I didn't become Christian until I was like 20, like where I actually gave myself to God and stuff like that, or Jesus, you know what I mean? But in my family, we've had weird experiences out in the country where we lived. It was kind of like a little bit of a remote area. So I'm just wondering. Yeah, I understand. Family lines and stuff like that. So.
I think there's a connection because they do go after family lines, bloodlines, especially if these individuals are not becoming baptized or being associated with the church whatsoever. Okay, they'll tend to go that direction. But let's get back onto the subject here. A now retired reporter from Tacoma Tribune interviewed Canfield back in the 1990s and wrote about the young man's supposed close encounter with the Batsquatch. As the reporter tells McDonald, Canfield seemed to believe what he saw was real, obviously. McDonald says he tried to interview Canfield about his story, but he instead was referred to the Monsters Across America team. He referred the Monsters Across America team to his mother, Sandra Canfield. She tells McDonald that her son, who has now moved away from the area, does not like to talk about the Batsquatch incident. Like we had just discussed, I don't blame him for that. McDonald runs through various theories about Batsquatch, including one that suggests the beast may be an example of a diabolical flying apes who were let loose from the pit of the earth by the eruption of Mount St. Helens. That possibility is discussed by an interview subject who wrote the book titled World Top Secret, Our Earth is Hollow.
I heard about the underground stuff going on. So, I mean...
I'm a believer in the hollow earth. It's not hard to believe such a thing.
Yeah, okay. I believe it
There's certain parts of our world that are hollow. I'm not a believer in the flat earth.
No, me neither. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Go out at night, look at the moon. All right? It's not an illusion. Even scripture mentions that the world is formed as a sphere. Okay? Yeah. It is not a flat plane of existence. All right. There are a lot of Christians who actually are starting to believe this stuff. Shame on them.
Yeah, yeah.
I will let that rest. I'm not going to go into
And then they're going to be on your comment saying, I don't believe this. You suck. La, 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 la.
Yeah.
They're going to go.
Well, we're going
to open up a can of worms. No, I'm just kidding.
That's fine.
Actually, that's kind of good to do once in a while to stir things up a little bit.
Why not? It makes things interesting. Stir the pot a little bit. Great.
I think you already do that enough because you had some problems with a few people.
Yeah, well, great. It's great for journalism,
Right.
Well, in 2009, near Mount Shasta in California, several hikers witnessed a huge creature with leathery wings fly out from a crevice in the mountain. Could have been a pterosaur. The creature was either the dreaded Batsquatch or a pterodactyl thunderbird. Descriptions vary. I went looking for this, and I couldn't find names. Now, I have a big problem with articles that don't have people's names. I don't usually like to read them, but it's associated with this thing. Whether or not there's some, more conclusive evidence.
Yeah, you can just take what you see and say, okay, do I believe this? Or maybe it has a connection with that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm more entitled to... Okay, look, because I know of the pterosaur phenomena in Washington State, I would be more likely to believe it. But I want to see a name. I want to see name, first name, last name. Would be very helpful. In 2011, in June of 2011, a man was in his yard walking his dog. The man went to pick up the dog when he saw something flying in the sky. His exact words, and I quote, "I saw something flying in the sky. It had bat wings, blue fur." Ooh, here we go. And had a face similar to eyes glowing red. It was about 9 feet tall, and at least after I watched it, it just flew away. His words are a bit jumbled there, but these are his words that I quoted. And finally, 2014, on April 14, 2014, in Archbishop Hoban High School in Akron, Ohio, a class witnessed a giant black mass zoom by the window of their homeroom at flash-like speed. The phenomenon gains momentum every summer, particularly in campgrounds as folks start to tell stories around the fire concerning the fearsome creature. I don't think this Archbishop Hoban High School has anything to do with the Batsquatch, but it was part of the article. So, this also could be the Me Too movement, where it's like, hey, I saw that too. That's fine. Yeah. But is it, credible? Mm-hmm. And again, I hate when there's no names there.
Yeah, so you're not sure,
Yeah.
Or maybe they didn't want people to know who did it or who wrote the article or... there's that too. Like, I want this to be anonymous. But then you could use a fake name, I guess.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Have a means of contacting. But then again,
Well, these days, when it comes to this kind of stuff, most people aren't shying away from it anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
Yeah. They're welcoming it. You have some really popular journalists who are now part of this regime, and they're going out looking. Mm-hmm. They're not really doing it the right way, though. It's just for... video sake or news sake. It doesn't have enough detail to it. There's not enough grunt work involved to really get to the bottom line, but at least they're doing something. If you are looking for tactical supplies, look no further than 9/11 Supply, located in Kaiser, Oregon. They have everything from hats, jackets, belts, pants from the 511 brand, and gloves. I got their pair of pants. I used them in Arkansas. Kept me warm the entire time. So the next time you're out looking for your monster, make sure you have the right gear. Gets the job done. 911 Supply for all your tactical needs.
We never know when life will test us. When danger will round the corner. When we will be called upon to act. With everything on the line. But being prepared gives us the confidence to excel when our whole world hangs in the balance. 511 Tactical. Always be ready.
You are listening to Cryptozoological Talk on the RRN Ropen Radio Network, broadcasting from the heart of Oregon, Salem's capital. Wherever you're listening, YouTube, Spotify, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever network you're on, we're glad you're here as we continue to dive into this strange phenomena of these strange flying humanoids. There's more to tell. There's lots of accounts, but we're not going to get to all of them. We're going to try and get to some of them, so you understand the phenomena behind all of this. Let me see here. I'm going to read this one to you. I'm going to bring this up because I think it's important. It's being circulated out there on the web, and I want to touch base on it real fast. This is a Mothman connection, Harbinger, all right? So if we have a creature that is potentially an omen of doom, I understand that part. May 22nd, 1915, 6:49 a.m., Lambert, Scotland, as World War I rages. 500 members of the 17th Battalion Royal Scots gather at the Lambert railway station to catch a special troop train for transport to Flanders Field. The war's major battle theater located on the Western Front. As the soldiers wait, a hideous harpy-like creature appears in the sky. While it looks similar to a bird, it has great black leathery wings and a human head with burning red eyes. The winged nightmarish shrieks and wails as it flies. Above the men who are so disturbed by this ill omen that they refuse to board the train, but the battalion's officer forces them at gunpoint. Hours later, the train would crash at Quintinshill Junction near, I wonder what that word says, Gretna?
Which one? The train would crash at Quintinshill Junction near Gretna.
On the Scottish border.
It's probably just a city, I'm guessing.
Okay. 9 passengers and 3 railway workers were killed. It remains the worst rail disaster in British history. I skipped some of this. All right. Now, okay, you see a creature that's potentially an omen of doom before something happens. Because we talked about how they feed off of the carnage of what's to come.
Yeah. So, in the Bible and, all this stuff, they depict angels having wings. Why can't demons have wings? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a thing.
Well, some would say angels don't have wings at all. They're just spirits. So I would agree with that too. But it also depends on what Scripture truly says about these apparent beings. All right? Now, according to this, you had people who died. Well, all the people who saw the creature died? Because if they did, then who reported this? Now, so the Quintinshill disaster is one of the worst in railway history. So if a monster had shown up before this happened, I wouldn't find that outlandish at all, because a Mothman did. All right? There was a reporter who went looking for maybe a survivor back in the early 2000s, and he did find a man. He mentions everything about the disaster from start to finish, but he does not mention the monster. Now, is that because he didn't see it? Well, wasn't there a lot of people that saw this thing? Okay. I don't think there's a mystery here. And according to this article here, there is no mystery about the crash at Quintinshill, a remote stretch of railway line just north of Carlisle in the Scottish borders. No unexplained twist or fate for a screenwriter to fasten onto. No failure of equipment. No violent storm or sudden explosion. On the contrary, the reason for the crash was simple. On a beautiful summer morning in the second year of the Great War, on a virtually dead straight section of track, a couple of signalmen simply forgot that they had left a train standing on the main line. That's terrible. Something as stupid as that and something as simple as that led to one of the worst disasters in railway history. So, with that being said, I can't find this article to be proof.
Yeah.
I find it to be false. So when people go looking and they see this one, I don't like to name names of who posts this because I don't know for sure if they wrote this themselves. They could. There's a lot of things that are fabricated online, especially when you're working with AI.
Yeah, see, what if you do catch something that's real? People are going to say it's
They're
not.
always going to say it's not real.
So that's difficult to do. You know what I mean? Like that would be like, let's say you go out and find something. People could easily say it's fake.
Yeah.
Unless you get technology. I think there's something out there that could show that it's not. But then again, people say, oh, it's still fake. So, I mean, but how it's written, I kind of feel like it's...
I think it's fabricated.
Kind of.
I think it's fabricated. I'm not going to say that the people where I found this article are making this stuff up because they found a source themselves.
So they changed it maybe a couple times since.
Yeah, I originally saw this on Creepy Acres. I love what Creepy Acres do. They have a great... They are the puppetry of cryptozoology. If you've ever seen Creepy Acres stuff, it's really neat. I'm hoping that they find out where this source came from and slam them for it because this is absolutely fake. There's nothing here to back it up.
Yeah.
And if you have in your article that says majority of the people died, then who survived to tell this tale about seeing the creature? I've gone looking for this creature all over, up and down. I spent hours looking for this creature. Nothing. Not a hint, not a word.
In real life, or you mean just...
In research.
Okay, researching, yeah.
Yeah, online research.
I thought you went over there.
No. No,
I
even if I did.
I was surprised, though.
Yeah. Is it really hard to believe that something showed up before? No, it's not out of the normal whatsoever. Okay. It very likely could have been there. There's just nothing to back it up.
So it kind of just appeared out of nowhere. The story kind of...
It did. I think it just surfaced from some site and we're like, hey, look at that. That's really interesting. Let's talk about that. Yes, but part of what I'm supposed to do is to blast the fake.
Yeah, so...
To expose the fake. Okay. And so wherever this source came from, they're fake. All right. They're putting out stories for entertainment. That's not good. It only discredits this field, and I hate this kind of stuff.
I've seen like videos and stuff like that and stories. I was looking at gargoyle stuff, and some of them, it was like they didn't say they were fake, but they didn't say they were real. And then like the story and how the guy was speaking, there's one of them on there, and he was speaking about it. It was too like nonchalant and all that. So I was like, okay, this has to be fake. You know, it sounds scripted. And kind of like with this, it sounds a little bit scripted to me, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a story and it's trying to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like someone was a good writer. You know, I don't know.
Well, somebody's having fun.
Yeah. That's what I mean by that.
When people are fascinated by this kind of stuff, they're trying to look at, okay, what can I do to create a horror story that reels people in? And it reeled me in because I was like, okay, well, we have something that's like the Mothman. It was more like a harpy of some sort, a harbinger, an omen of doom, which I'm not going to rule out of the possibility, but it's just, I don't think that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no proof of it at all. There's no eyewitness testimony whatsoever. So I'm going to let that one rest. It's a fake. There have been people who have come forward from NASA saying that experiments are being done.
Yeah.
At NASA, which would lead to why on one fateful night, a man saw something he should not have seen. Okay. This happened in 86. We don't know exactly what time this was, or what date, but it happened in January of 1986. If you go back to that year, what happened in our history? Catastrophic event that happened in 1986. The Challenger exploded, killing everyone. Some believe that they actually still survived in that pod as they hit the ocean, but at 200 miles an hour, no, I don't think so. This is borderline Mothman stuff right here. And one of the best stories I've come across that surfaced in 2005. You're not going to find it in your notes.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
I'm going to share that one with you. And I'm sure you know this one. It became famous in 2005 by author Nick Redfern, who wrote this story, the book, True Conspiracies of NASA. You can get this online. But on page 154, or is it 155, one or the other, Monsters of NASA. Frank Shaw was a historian, archivist who worked for NASA. Long hours, probably deep within the dungeon of the NASA buildings. One blusterous night, he was off work late. He was going to head for home. As he's leaving the building, he feels a presence come over him as he drops his keys. Goes to pick them up and feels a presence looming behind him. When Frank turns around, on top of the NASA building is a hideous-looking creature staring down at him from directly above. He describes what he can only say is a gargoyle-like creature, relishing the fact that Frank sees it because it has a grin on its face. Mm-hmm. Kind of like Brian, where this thing was trying to, in a sense, smile because it was noticed. And that's when he actually sees the wings open up. Almost at first he thought it was a cape. The wings sprout open, they open up, and it reveals this massive creature. That moment in time, Frank darts for the car as this thing is coming off the building and chasing and coming towards him. Gets in his car, slams the door, looks off in the sky, and you can see it circling above as it takes off into the night. Now, it didn't harm him, but relished the idea that he had seen it. On his way home, he tells his family, and once he arrives, his daughter, Desiree, and his wife, what he had seen was this terrifying creature on the NASA building. And he dubbed it, and we later called it, the NASA Gargoyle. For him, it was very difficult to grasp the whole idea, the whole concept of a monster on a building. Some actually believe that it's not a gargoyle, but maybe the famous spring-heeled Jack, the bouncing man. Mm-hmm. While others believe it to be Vampirum spectrum, maybe just a large vampire bat.
See, all these things could mix, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like all these cryptids you're talking about are similar, but there's some slight differences. So who's to say they can't breed multiple times and create new things? And
oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just what I've seen.
Oh, absolutely. So, but Houston is known for having a lot of winged humanoid sightings. Mm-hmm. Lots. Not just pterosaurs. Pterosaurs are so much. There's so many of them in Texas. But also these flying humanoids. Okay. So he tells his family the situation, and the next day he decides to tell his superiors. Couldn't hold it back anymore. And the superior said that a whole case file was open on this creature because it had killed 2 of their guard dogs, mutilated them. Okay. So something's definitely going on the grounds of the Houston NASA building. Okay. Credible right there. But they also told him if he valued his job, he should keep quiet, which he really didn't. But then he was paid a visit by some people that helped change his mind. Frank later died in the late 90s or early 2000s, from what I know. Desiree Shaw came forward with her father's story in 2005, to which then it was published by Nick Redfern in that book that you can all get. Desiree does not want to talk about this anymore. I've made attempts to reach out to her. Not easy. And I'm going to just respect her privacy and let it go. She is the only person who talked to Nick, and she won't talk to anyone else. All right, but at least we have a statement, and we have names, and we have people. So I do believe this did happen. But what did he see? Well, according to Frank, he said he saw a gargoyle. According to Desiree Shaw, she said her father saw a gargoyle. I'll believe that, and I'll leave that. Now, is this creature a harbinger? Did it know the Challenger was going to explode?
Well, if it has psychic abilities like the other ones do.
Telekinesis and psychic abilities. So. It fed off the carnage. It knew something was going to happen. It was there. Mm-hmm. It felt there was, when Frank saw this thing, he felt the presence of evil. Good, clear indication right there that something's terribly wrong. Okay. So it almost plays into a factor like the Mothman does. But again, if it's a warning, it sucked at that because it didn't give a warning. There's nothing they could do to stop the Challenger from exploding. It just exploded. So it happened weeks or days before the Challenger, exploded. As soon as they throttled up Commander Scobie, they were doomed. Sad moment in history. Everybody could feel the sting of death, and there's a looming presence to where it's.
Do you think these things
Go ahead.
contribute to this, to all these catastrophes, or it's just a coincidence and they just know it's going to happen and they go there? Or do they have something to do with it? Like,
I think they have a little bit of the hands in the cookie jar there.
That's kind of what I think too. It's like,
I think it's a combination
evil,
of
like
both.
Destruction, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah. It's sad too, because no one should have to go through what Frank Shaw did. Mm-hmm. He saw something and he wanted to tell his superior so everybody else could be safe too.
And then he mysteriously died, or did he die of something?
I think that he may have died naturally, natural causes. So I don't know for sure. She didn't go into that. She just said, I'm ready to tell my father's story. Because she believed him. His wife believed him naturally. That's what you expect. Your father's going to tell you something, you're going to believe him. Okay. He was very sincere, scared, out of his mind, and it actually probably took him time to calm down.
See, the men in black came.
They did. Well, they weren't men in black.
But you know what I mean? Like some kind of government officials.
Higher officials. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's things that are kept from us, in my opinion, that they're researching.
Yeah.
Just what I believe. And then, one got let out, or someone actually saw it, they're not supposed to. And who knows what that's about. But it's obvious that a lot of times when people have these encounters, like alien type of beings, they get visited by what they call, quote unquote, men in black.
Yeah.
So, which I hate talking about this stuff online because I'm like, oh no, I don't want to get a visit.
Well, we're coming to the end here. We're going to have to wrap up real fast soon. They're fairly new. Anything from NASA Gargoyle, Turkey Creek, Popobawa. These creatures are out there. I hate to say it, but that's what they are. They're gargoyles. That's what they look like. That's what you see perched on churches around the world. So why are we celebrating them with our art?
Yeah, it's like they knew they were there.
As if they know something. I'm not saying people who create these things and put them on buildings know something we don't. Mm-hmm. Maybe they do.
Or maybe they've seen them and they're like, oh.
They got to come from somewhere, right? So we have to look at the origins of all this. And then it comes down to you as the viewer. Mm-hmm. What are you going to decide for yourself? Are these creatures real? Are they out there? After hearing the testimony of Brian and the testimony of others, not in these reports, testimony separate from it, I'm convinced there are flying humanoids in our world that are destructive, manipulative, and working behind the scenes against humanity. And with that, I end it. So I'm grateful for Brian Lile appearing on our show today. Grateful for Danielle Baker taking the time to meet with me today and go through this, because this is information that we rarely come across when we think of winged creatures or winged fiends of some sort. But this is what I consider the living grotesque. These creatures take on this form. They're in our world. And what can we do to stop it? Well, you can expose it, as Ephesians 5 would tell us. So, Danielle, thank you for joining me on the Ropen Network today. All right. Okay, Danielle has left the studio to finish and sum this up the best I can. Turkey Creek in Missouri is the Ozarks, a large area that's very quiet, very creepy. You can feel the aura at night. Something is out of place. And Brian is correct. There is a burial ground there. Where there's a burial ground, there are spirits. This is a known fact. Spirits like to haunt these areas. But do creatures like to haunt these areas? Yeah, I think they do. There is a vortex in Turkey Creek that may be affecting the water as well. We all know that there are strange poles of the earth. There's lots of strange wormholes. There's the Bermuda Triangle, but did you know, there are other vortexes around the earth as well? Oh yes, they've been documented. I'm not trying to say that this creature is coming from the pits of hell, but it may be dimensional. Okay? I don't want to take that out of the equation. We would know more if I was to go there and see for myself, but that hasn't been the case yet. And I would say that's probably not going to happen. I think we're dealing with a very powerful potential spirit or creature. You don't want to take a chance. You do not tempt the Lord thy God. Okay? So I'll stay away from that. Instead, I'll try to look more at the geographical location of where this creature may be residing. He's very adamant that it is not a flying reptile. I believe him. So if we have a vortex, is this creature coming out of this vortex? Is it a dimensional pull? I'd be open for possibilities on that one. I think it's a good, strong case. Something else I want to consider as well, aside from the vortex. Seeing that it is an ancient burial ground, I'm not going to say Indian burial ground because it's not the right word. It's Native American burial ground. There's a good chance that this thing is most likely a skinwalker. But rarely do I hear cases about skinwalkers flying. A humanoid creature that flies. That is potentially a skinwalker. But I'll leave the door open partway. So let's say, for instance, you have an angelic being. A fallen angelic being, right? Angelic spirit of some sort that has fallen. So instead of seeing its glory and its beauty, we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing the ugliness of what this thing truly is. That will conclude our show this time around. Stay tuned, more to come. In the meantime, seek the truth. May God bless every one of you on the other side of this screen. We'll see you next time on the Ropen Radio Network.